Good afternoon. How are you? Well, Thomas Jefferson would say, it is as still, the air is as still as it could possibly be. Nothing seems to be moving. And the heat, when I'm not in the shade, as I am on this trail, which is one of the reasons I like it, is 90 degrees. So we went from our 60s to our 70s to our 80s to our 90s, and then maybe we'll turn around and go back down again. There's a lot of different news going on. The Supreme Court has been active. The term for the abortion pill is the mifepristone, and apologies for mispronunciation. But the question was, a bunch of anti-abortion doctors thought that the pill shouldn't be distributed, and they basically attacked FDA. The Supreme Court unanimously decided that the doctors didn't have standing. They were wrong. If they had an objection, they could make it in the hearings over at the FDA. And so they made the right decision unanimously. But there are miles to go before we rest, because there are other things going on that they don't handle quite as well, if you would think. It's so transparently frivolous. And so we're in the month of decisions. You may wonder, where's the Supreme Court been? This is normally the month where they issue their decisions, and they often hold their most important ones to the end, a little suspense. And there was talk a week or so ago that they would make a decision first thing, but they haven't. And they haven't because this cult of six, this Supreme Court, stands for the proposition that Trump can do no wrong, nor do they feel beleaguered by their inconsistent sworn testimony before the Senate when they were approved for the Supreme Court on one of their declarations, a very obvious one, which is that they would respect precedent and that Roe v. Wade was settled law, as it was for 50 years before that crackpot on the Supreme Court got his hands on it. So that's kind of where we stand. I also read a thing today in which employers are now paying for weight loss. And like everybody else, I pay attention to it. And like I've said on more than one occasion, if I look at a slice of bread, I gain a pound. But the other thing as you get older is that you want to maintain that energy you had when, you were 20. And I had researched creatinine, or creatine, which is one of the measures they use to see how healthy your kidneys are. And I've talked to various doctors, but I think the accumulated information is that a 1 for creatinine is good, is normal. There is a range, however, and it's both below and above that. But I went in for a physical, and then they said, oh, look at that, you're a little dehydrated. And I said, well, people say that. What do you mean I should just drink more water? No, this creatinine level is up. And that you have to be careful if the number goes up too much, because it can compromise your kidney. So my cure was two things. I stopped this youth-enhancing strength that I did seem to get in reasonable quantities. And I increased how much liquid I drank, and my numbers went down. Now, the doctor that I visited to work out this said everybody's looking for a shortcut. Well, I'm not telling you this so much about myself as about the things that it might have been useful if somebody had a high school class on this instead of just sex. And I say just sex because I think everybody figures that out. But the things that are not figured out are, well, your body changes dramatically by the time you're 40, and it's a rear guard action, in my opinion. And so the exercise that you used to do that would cure your weight no longer has any connection with it. The two, at least in my experience. And so now you jump forward in my own lifetime, and I've had a ringside seat, as has Holly, to the side effects of any medication you take. And, if you're doing a double lung transplant, they're pretty dramatic medicines and they have pretty dramatic side effects. But it's not just somebody who's in a category like Holly is. Everything out there has some sort of side effect. And you should read it and be careful, because the better you feel until you don't is the moral of the story of not examining what you're taking in. So you consider this my PSA, my public service announcement. You can ignore me. I understand why we all want to appear like social x-rays. I don't know if you remember Bonfire of the Vanities. Tom Wolfe described the too thin people on the Upper East Side and at the Manhattan parties as so thin he considered them social x-rays. So in your effort to lose weight, keep in mind a lot of people have a natural weight that is not x-ray. And we all gain weight from when we're 18 to whatever age we are now. So that's something to keep in mind. I have a couple of things on mind. I've been getting, at first I was annoyed by it, AARP publications. When you're 50, they start giving you these things. And my first reaction was, I'm too young for this stuff. I shouldn't be getting this stuff. And I have not retired. I continue to work. But still, somebody saying in a society that is averse to age and presumably wisdom and or the weakening and compromise of one's gifts when young as one gets older, we have this difficult thing going on. And one of those problems that I focused on is the pain that comes not just with age. You can get it when you're 10 or 12. Terrible accident, you have horrible pain, maybe the whole rest of your life. And it comes like a storm inside of you sometimes. Now, I haven't had this pain, but we've all had acute pain. We fell, hit an elbow, broke something. But chronic pain is like forever. And so AARP had a cover story in the current issue, and it was all about pain. And I thought, finally, somebody's going to talk about how we need to use intelligently opioids, because we don't get enough natural pain relief from the body we inhabit. And many people can't function without some pain medication to allow them to function. And I've seen it, and I've talked to these people, and I've represented them, so I know it's real. And I have seen how they react. Well, so I read the article, hoping it's something I'm going to want to circulate to the world beyond. And they're talking about alternatives, And I don't want to go into it because AARP does a lot of good, but we have to understand that a person who uses an opiate to deal with pain when prescribed with a pain medication is not an addict. They are dependent, and they use it as they may need to. And there does come a time for many people in which they can stop it, but there's also a large number of people that need pain medication their whole life. And when they can't get it, some commit suicide, or they try to self-medicate with alcohol or substitute drugs, or they go to Mexico. This is a terrible thing. We're supposed to be such an advanced country, and we have kind of a blue laws mentality about science and a religious mentality about what one can do or not when the science provides for us. So that's a little distressing. There are two other things that come up that are a function of, if you will, of medical science, and the function having to do with reproduction. And one could get pretty cynical and say what life is really about is from like 18 to 35, and the process for many people is just to generate another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people to replace them when they go on. And this is one of the problems with our world: overpopulation, children that are unwanted, and so forth. But it's interesting that people who are against abortion would object, as the Southern Baptists have, to in vitro fertilization, meaning someone hosts the merger of an ovum and a sperm with a certain chemical stew that increases the possibility of having an ovum that may grow into a child. They're against that. And our Congress, and this is 2024, our Congress couldn't get approval in the Congress for this. All the posturing, all the nonsense. We see that we lack a scientific basis for our positions. We know it works. We know there are people who are prepared to go to hell and back, to go through this process, to be hurt when it fails, because it does work, and then they have the child that they care about. And another one that's a mixture of intrusive religion and past battles we've fought is contraception. It is clear that we should be able to have contraception. Not everybody has the health to have a child. Not everybody wants a child. Holly and I, where we thought past the years when she would get pregnant, so we didn't think anything of it, and we had a miscarriage. We didn't think she could be pregnant, and this is some time ago now. So, but we were still old enough when we met that we didn't think this was a possibility. The things that can happen in this world. So the miscarriage was because when you have a fecundated ovum and it travels down the tubes, it can cause a great problem. And we were very concerned about that. So other people, I'm sure, are in the same situation. We have a tool. It is between our ears, and it has a foundation in people who've gone before that inform us what we can do and how we can do it. And then there are some jerks out there who, for bizarre reasons, don't want us to use these tools. Science is ignored. And I'm kind of jumping around, and I'll try to tie these together a little bit if my imagination is not fried in the 90-degree temperature. And we have measured, well, if not the evolution, the progress or passage of humanity with epochs that we name. And for about 7 decades, we have treated the last 7 decades as the Anthropocene period or epoch. And the notion is that it's the age of humans, that we are affecting everything around us. And there are people out there who give ridiculous examples, even in the spectacular and painful and surprising and, dare I say it, biblical proportions of disasters coming from the weather. And it comes from what we do on the earth. You know, sure, overpopulation, limited resources, pumping into the air, greenhouse gases, presidential candidates, or at least one, saying, give me $1 billion and for my campaign, and I'll take care of oil and gas. I'll protect you. Drill, drill, drill. And so we have science and tools and intellect, and we cast an eye back to when the debate was, does the sun revolve around the earth? Who is at the center of the universe? And if you say other than the Bible says, you're a blasphemer. You must be punished. And they were. Some worse than others. But what's our explanation today? We live in an age in which some have gone to the moon. We are in spaceships. We are doing amazing things, good things, with information. But at the same time, we have created a science that can destroy the whole world. And that's why people have gone 5 or 6 times to see Oppenheimer, to wrap their minds around a very dramatic presentation, quite believable, of how we came to a point without knowledge that if we were to drop these bombs, and Truman did it in Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, would it ignite the entire earth and be the end of humankind? But we went ahead and did it. And we're the ones who dropped the nuclear weapons, and we haven't stopped developing them and so forth. And in this regard, we can't ignore the fact that even as we're sweating out if there'll ever be a peace accord, if you can call it that, in the Middle East involving Palestine, Israel, and the Hamas in Gaza, we have to keep in mind that in recent days, Israel went and executed a commander, a Hezbollah commander, and then the story becomes Hezbollah struck back against Israel. That is a tinderbox just waiting to happen. So how can I synthesize these various elements? Well, some of it is acquiring information, like me learning what somebody might have told me when I was in high school or law school or college or something about how I actually work, how each of us actually works so that we can drink more water. And, in my case, it didn't amount to anything except educating and acting upon it. But there are a lot of people who don't. And we extend this to the only thing we were taught in the lower grades, which is how to multiply. And there's a lot of snickering and giggling. And I was taught about it in grammar school. And when my dad came to me, I think in high school, he said, should we have a talk? And I said, is it about such and such, about sex? He said, yeah. I said, oh, I knew all about that. Well, I didn't know about that. And my dad apparently, who was a very comfortable man in the sense of there was nothing off limits, I think he felt relieved, which made me think my mom said to him, you better go in and talk to him. And my aunts thought I was the Prince of the Bronx. So they were afraid that I would go out with one of the girls in the neighborhood, and that would be a big mistake. So we have this science. It's not magic. It's not religion. It's real. And it should inform our legislative decisions. It should inform our judicial decisions. It should be an opportunity to devote funds and energy to a golden era ahead. But instead, we see the chaos of extremism beating back resentment and criticism by those who think better, or seem to, but who believe that our system so permeates every body in our 50 states so that it will right itself without us doing anything. In high school, the Jesuits warned us about an attitude. And I remember it as if it were being said to me yesterday. And what was said was, there's a lot of people that say, let George do it. Now, what they're really saying is, I'm not going to do anything. George will do it. Who is George? I don't know. So there's somebody else who will do it. We can't afford that kind of passivity. It doesn't mean you have to climb the ramparts and risk your life. But it does mean, if you don't do the little things, you may put your life and your freedom at risk in this day and age. So, are we going to release hell in the Middle East by mishandling and not talking frankly about what's going on there? Are we going to lose Zelensky in the Ukraine to Russia because this is a presidential election year and people are playing with the peace of the world? Are we going to ignore what preserves and protects our health by making statements that will get us elected, though presumably, even with a low IQ, you understand that that's disserving the public. So we have a fractured society when we don't push back. And we are, increasingly. And I think we have to do more. It's a start. I spoke about this yesterday. And so I'm recycling at least the coda of what I said, which is that we can't be passive. We have to act upon the events of our day. And we have to distinguish between what's silly and what's critically important. You see, Trump and his people that we're treating as a joke have the inside skinny on what they're doing, which is, sure, laugh at us now, but when we take over the White House this time, this is the last election you're going to have. So that's what I got. Here I am out on the trail. The trees are not melting. I am a little bit. So I'll be out tomorrow and I'll talk to you from our Cathedral of Trees. All the best. Bye-bye.